What's up, everybody, and welcome into the Phillip Jordan Show. I am Phillip Jordan from Riceboro on College Football and 96.9 The Legend in Dothan, Alabama, where I'm the in-studio host and producer of Dothan Football. Welcome into the Thursday edition of the Phillip Jordan Show. Got a fun show planned for you guys today. I am going to be joined by Creg Stephenson from AL.com. We are going to discuss the South Alabama Jaguars. A lot of hype, a lot of expectations with the team returning many starters from last year's team that went 10-3, lost their bowl game, lost a close game to Troy, lost a close game to UCLA. This team could have been 12-0 and in the Sun Belt Championship game. A couple plays would have went their way. So I will be joined by Creg to talk all that and much, much more with the Jaguars of South Alabama. And also we'll dip into the mailbag as well. Got an interesting question on South Florida. So South Alabama, South Florida, we're going to be breaking it down. So we'll have all that for you here on today's edition of the Phillip Jordan Show. And then I'm going to take a quick break. But when we come back, my conversation with Creg Stephenson from AL.com. You can check out the Phillip Jordan Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review, and I'll read it on a future edition of the show. And if you just leave 4 stars, you're just a straight-up hater. You can also check out the show over on my YouTube channel, the Phillip Jordan Media YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell for all notifications, and please leave a comment on a video, and I'll read it on a future edition of the show. You can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC, or you can email me at sports.philipjordan@gmail.com. Let me tell you about my friend Brandon Eiserman's new podcast, Talking Noles. Brandon's keeping the Talking podcast alive. Twice a week, Brandon discusses the latest news in Florida State athletics and interviews people involved with the program. Check out Talking Noles on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Phillip Jordan Show. Everybody joining me today on the show is Creg Stephenson. He covers the South Alabama Jaguars over at AL.com. So we're jumping into the Sun Belt today. As we talk, Creg, it's been a while since we've done this, since we chatted, but I do appreciate you taking the time. Come on and talk South Alabama.
Yeah, man, Phillip, happy to do it. I'm glad to be on.
Yeah, so this South Alabama team, I mean, reading your coverage and checking, this is a team that's got a lot of players coming back from a really good team last year, 10-3 team. Just kind of looking back at 2022, like I said, 10-3, they're now 15-10 under Coach Wommack. What has he done there with the program to bring on the success after 2 years?
Well, I think part of it, he had some familiarity with the program because he'd been here before as defensive coordinator. A lot of the veteran players that were still here were guys that he helped recruit. So, he had credibility with that group, but he came in with a really good plan, very organized guy, had worked under some really good head coaches, was at Indiana, was the Broyles Award finalist as assistant coach of the year in 2020. And, just brings a lot of youth and energy. He's only 36 now. He was 33 when he got the job. He's done a really good job of surrounding himself with a good staff. Major Applewhite is probably the biggest name on his staff, the former Alabama and Texas offensive coordinator, Houston head coach. But also some guys like Michael Smith, who has worked in the SEC at Kentucky and Arkansas as receivers coach, and he's a guy that is recruited at an SEC level. Corey Batoon is a really, a veteran guy that's been with some great coaches, with kind of a Hugh Freeze right-hand man for a long time. So Kane surrounded himself with some good coaches. And I think he's done a great job of taking advantage of the transfer portal and bringing in a lot of guys that, Mobile is a really talent-rich area in Alabama in general. And you get some guys that maybe go to the SEC or Big 12 level and they're not playing as much as they might want to. And when they get ready to come back home or close to home, they can come to South Alabama. And they've had a lot of those guys come in that have really helped this program out the last 2 years. James Jackson, the starting center, was a Mississippi State transfer. Jalen Jordan, starting safety, is from Ole Miss. James Miller, starting inside linebacker, was a guy that played for Kane Wommack in Indiana. So they have really upgraded the talent, and most notably probably Jake Bentley, first of all, starting quarterback last year, who played high school football in the state of Alabama, and then at South Carolina and Utah, came back to Alabama to play at South Alabama, and then Carter Bradley, who's from Toledo, doesn't really have any direct connections to the state of Alabama, but his dad is an NFL coach, and Wommack has a relationship with his dad, and so they brought him in as the quarterback last year, and he set all kinds of records. So, I think it's one, having a great plan, having a great staff, and just really doing a great job in the transfer portal, and everything kind of came together at the right time for South Alabama.
Yeah, and you're right on the talent that is in that area, in the Mobile area, because of me over here in Dothan, doing the Dothan Wolves game. A lot of our teams over here in the playoffs get matched up with the teams over there in Mobile. So I always pay attention to what's going over in Mobile when it comes to high school football playoff time. And last year, I mean, you look at it, at one point lost to UCLA, and then the Detroit game to 10-6. I mean, this thing was close to being a 12-0 team last season.
Yeah, they probably would have been ranked at some point last year. And yeah, you're right. That Troy game in particular, you want to win. The UCLA game would have been great for him in national profile. And obviously, beating a Power 5 team. They've only done that once when they beat Mississippi State in Joey Jones's tenure. When Kane Wommack, actually, that was Kane Wommack's first game as defensive coordinator when they beat Mississippi State. And then, but the Troy game is the one that kind of eats at you a little bit, because that was basically determined the conference championship. And if you win they've never won the conference. So as much as they accomplished here last year and had the best season they've ever had as an FBS program, they were still upstaged a little bit by Troy. And Troy has a first-year head coach in John Summerall, who, has really done some great things there as well. So I guess that's going into 23. That's the last hurdle to conquer, is to finally beat Troy, which they haven't done in 6 years, and to get a chance to play in the Sun Belt Conference Championship game.
So looking at this team going to the spring, for you looking at this team, because a lot of players coming back, as I mentioned off the top of our conversation, what are the big storylines in your mind for this team during the spring?
Yeah, it's depending on how you do the math, it's 18 or 20 starters back. Now they have 4 guys who started in the bowl game are gone, including Jalen Wayne, who's one of the best receivers in the program's history. Darrell Luter, who's probably going to be an NFL draft pick here in about a month, and then James Jackson, 2-year starter at center. But they have 2 guys who were injured during the season, either missed the season entirely or missed most of the season. Quentin Wilfon, an outside linebacker, who's moving to outside linebacker now. And then Keith Goldman, who's a 3-year starter at safety, got hurt in the preseason, didn't play at all. And so, if you count those guys as returning starters, you got 20 returning starters, which is an incredible number. It's really impressive that these guys most of them are now in their second or third year in Wommack's program. So it's really about solidifying the guys that they have here and getting them another year under their belt in the Wommack system. There are a few newcomers of note in the spring. Mainly, there's one cornerback, Reggie Neely, who's probably going to be a starter when it's all said and done, is one of the impressive newcomers. And then some Gio Lopez, who's probably the quarterback of the future, is a true freshman. He's here this spring. But really, again, it's about solidifying the veterans and kind of building everybody into that cohesive unit for a championship run this year.
I know on offense, and like I said, all these guys coming back. I mean, like you mentioned, Jalen Wayne, he's one of the receivers gone, but you still have Devin Voisin. I'm probably messed up his name.
Rhymes with poison. That's the best way to remember it.
Then you got Colin Lacey coming back too. I mean, they had 3 receivers over 800 yards last year, which is incredible. Then you have your running back, LaDainian Webb, coming back over 1,000 yards. And then your quarterback, as you mentioned, who was second in the Sun Belt in passing yards, 28 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. When you look at him, though, where do you think he needs to improve, though, this spring?
Bradley has an NFL arm, which is great. But the problem is he has an NFL arm. So he takes some risks that maybe he shouldn't. And he will he'll throw the ball off balance sometimes and try to wing it 40 yards down the field, and it'll be picked off or whatever. So I think that's the part of it. Also, and this is the thing that he has worked on, he took a pretty big pounding last year. He's 6'3". He played at about 210, 212 last year. He said he wants to be up closer to 230 this year. So I think putting on a little bit of bulk is probably going to help him. but he can make all the throws. I mean, you say that about a lot of people, but he really can. He has got a legit NFL arm. I'm not saying he's going to play in the NFL necessarily, but he's got the arm strength for it, and can run enough. But yeah, I think with him, I think it's mainly the decision making in crunch time probably needs a little bit of work.
So, who do you see as being someone that can step up, be that third wide receiver replacing Wayne?
Yeah.
I know they've got the Missouri transfer in, Javon Ivory coming in, but I know he's limited in the spring.
Right.
From what you've seen and heard, who do you think could be that third guy?
Yeah, Ivory's actually from Memphis, and he's from here, not too far from here. He's from Grove Hill, just up the road from Mobile. I think he's probably going to be the guy. He had almost 100 receptions at Memphis during his career. He, like you said, he hasn't done a whole lot in the spring. I'm not sure exactly what the injury is, but he hasn't participated in a ton of the 11-on-11 type stuff. I think there's probably, including him, Shamar Sandgren, who's the guy that transferred in from junior college, who was here this spring. It's going to be one of those guys. And then a guy that's from not too far from where you are, Jay DeJuan Townsend from Eufaula. Great athlete. Just hasn't gotten on the field a ton the last 2 years, but when he has, he's made some things happen. So I think those three, along with Devin Voisin and Colin Lacey, that's probably where your biggest part of the passing game is going to come from.
Yeah, Eufaula knows how to put out good talent there.
Yeah,
they've had a couple of guys could go to the NFL that come from Eufaula. Their head coach actually played in the NFL, Darrell Jernigan. Offensive line, they got 4 guys back, but they got to move. Doing some shifting there with one guy going over to center and Reggie Smith.
That's right. Yeah, and he's an interesting story because he's undersized. It's funny when you say somebody 6'1", 297 is undersized, because that's about, but he is, and he was a walk-on who earned a scholarship, played right guard last year, and now he's the center. So so he's kind of solidified that. I think Reed Bies, who's a guy that transferred in from Mississippi State, is going to have an opportunity there, and maybe at right guard as well. James Robinson, who is, I want to say he's from Montgomery. I got to double check that. But he transferred in from Tennessee, and he's another one that's going to have a chance there. He's a Montgomery guy. One of them maybe hold on, I'm about to, Carver. He's Montgomery Carver. So anyway, I think that's how it's going to go. The rest of the line, though, is back, as you mentioned. Josh McCulloch at left tackle, Dante Lucas at left guard, who transferred in from Florida State, and then Adrian Strickland, who was a redshirt freshman last year from the Florida Panhandle, was a guy that committed to Florida initially out of high school. They really like him. I think he's probably a future star. But so, all the rest of the line's back, all the tight ends are back, all the running backs except one Omni Wells, who was kind of the third down back. Everybody else is back on the offensive side of the ball. It's not a whole lot of jobs up for grabs. Usually there's 6 or 8 positions up for grabs, but this year there's more like 3 or 4.
Yeah, as a coaching staff, they have got to love that just from a simple consistency. Everybody knows it's the same coordinators. It's just everything's the same. Just kind of pick up, just get better. Defense side of the ball, I was looking at it this morning for getting ready for our conversation. You look at last year's stats, in the Sun Belt. You won't see a South Alabama player in the top 5 in some categories. But when you do look at them as a team defense, they were really, really good. Second in the Sun Belt when it comes to points per game, third in yards. I mean, they were up there. They were second against the run. Sacks was the middle of the conference, but defensively, they were a really solid unit. And then they bring a lot of their guys back. And you say you got 2 guys coming back, and Keith Gallman at safety has been, which looks like South Alabama is got a bunch of safeties they can play. But just your thoughts on this defense going through the spring.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like you said, there's not any true superstars. I guess if the closest thing they have to that is probably Yam Banks, who's the nickel safety, first team all conference, set a school record for interceptions. Just kind of a big play guy. But they don't have somebody who's going to get 12 sacks or 120 tackles, or they rotate in a bunch of guys. And another part of it is if you're getting off the field on third down, you're not going to have a whole lot of tackles because the other team's got a 3 or 4 play drive as opposed to, you know what I mean? I mean, So that's part of it. Their leading tackler last year, I think I had 80, which was the safety Jaden Voisin, which is Devin's twin brother. So they, it's a really, really interesting defensive philosophy. They call it the Swarm D. It was Dave Wommack, which is Kane's father, defensive coordinator at a lot of different places, including Ole Miss, Arkansas, Southern Miss, and some other places. And it's a 4-2-5. And they walk one of the outside linebackers up to basically play a rush defensive end and then use the nickel safety. And they call it a vision defense. It's basically about keeping the ball in front of you and making a play on it. That's what they try to do. And so you're right. You don't have not a whole lot of gambling. They will blitz, but you're not going to it's more about just kind of smothering the other team.
Now, it looks like they have a predicament here in the spring when it comes to outside linebacker because it seems like everybody is banged up and injured. So I guess that's a good thing, though. You get a look at some guys you maybe wouldn't get as much of a look at. I guess that you could look at the positive on that too.
That's true. Yeah, I think the 3 scholarship outside linebackers they have are all injured and not doing a whole lot. They're doing some individual stuff, but none of the 7-on-7 or 11-on-11 or contact stuff. Quentin Wilfon's going to be the guy, though. He had a bone spur on his neck that was causing him problems last year and had to shut it down after 3 games. He had that taken care of, and actually talked to him earlier this week, and he said he should be good to go. Once the summer rolls around, and he's really being counted on to be. That's one thing they haven't had the last couple of years is a real just dynamic pass rusher, and I think they're kind of counting on him to be that. Yeah, it is odd though that if you're going out there to the scrimmage, which they have one Friday, you're going to see a bunch of walk-ons out there playing that position because none of the main guys are going to be playing.
What have you been seeing on who could replace Darrell Luter? As you mentioned, the guy that will be playing on Sundays next year.
Yeah, they used mainly 3 guys last year. That was Luter, Jamar Richardson, who's also gone. He was a 5th-year Ole Miss transfer, so he only had 1 year. The 3rd guy was Marquise Robinson. They call him Cuddy. He probably will be the main guy this year. Ricky Fletcher, who was a freshman last year, played a good bit on special teams and on defense, is another one. And then Reggie Neely, the JUCO transfer from Mississippi, I think they think is a guy that can step right in and start. Those are probably the 3 main corners going into the spring and probably beyond. And the other thing is too, the portal's going to open back up in May, so I wouldn't be surprised if they go get a couple of more guys, to try to shore things up there. Because in this day and age, with the way that offenses operate, you probably need 4 or 5 good corners on your team to get through a season.
Yeah, I mean, too bad they don't have that problem that they have at safety, I guess. So with all the guys, as we mentioned with Yam Banks, you talked about him, Jaden Voisin, also over there to Jalen Jordan and Keith Gallman returning. I did read your article talking about that as one of the storylines of the spring. It is kind of interesting. I noticed that they're going to try to get all of them out there if they can.
Yeah, I think that is kind of unusual, but Jaden Voisin, when he first got here, was a corner, and I think he was a corner in high school. He actually was in line to play quite a bit, maybe even start as a true freshman, but he hurt his knee right before the season started, had to redshirt that year. And then when the new staff came in, they moved him to safety. So, he's a guy that kind of has a corner skill set. I think Jalen Jordan is a guy that has played some corner in his career when he was at Ole Miss. So, you may see a situation. And Yam Banks was recruited as a corner. And as a matter of fact, that's what they like about him is that he's kind of a cornerback in a safety's body. Those 3 and Gallman, who is a kind of a career safety, I guess you could say, there could be some situations where all 4 of those guys are on the field at the same time. In addition, if you go 6 defensive backs or whatever. So, I think they feel comfortable with that and wouldn't be surprised if we do see that. One other guy I didn't mention before, Ladarian Craig, who is a Baker High School graduate, started his career at South Carolina and is now at Gulf Coast Community College in Mississippi. He's a guy that signed in February and is going to be here in the summer. So he's another guy that maybe will help him out at corner.
With this team and as your time covering South Alabama, is this kind of like going into 2023? I mean, they hadn't finished the spring yet. A lot of expectations and hype, the most hype around a South Alabama team.
No question about it. I think that I would not be surprised if they're the preseason Sun Belt favorite. At least to win the West, if not to win the whole conference. Now, obviously, somebody's got to beat Troy. Troy's kind of the king until you knock them off. But they lost a lot of talent. They had they had several sixth-year guys that were there, including Carlton Marshall, who's the all-time leading tackler in college football history. Those guys are gone. They lost two really, really good NFL quality, maybe offensive linemen. So I think South Alabama is going to be the preseason favorite. The East side, some of the teams they expected to be really strong last year, App State, most notably Georgia State, they were not very good last year, so they got a lot to prove. I think James Madison will be good again. I think Marshall will be good again. On the West side, Southern Miss is kind of on the way up, but the rest of the division is kind of rebuilding. So yeah, I think this is going to be the preseason favorite, and coming off a year where you won 10 games, to have even higher expectations is really something. Yeah, this is a program that they didn't even play football until 2009. They did not move into the Sun Belt permanently as a full-time member until 2012. Still have never won a bowl game. Last year was the first year as an FBS program they had finished with a winning record. They had never won more than 6 games. So, yeah, it's kind of the glory days of South Alabama football right now, for sure.
And just ask Reggie Smith. He did say 12 games is the expectation
Yeah.
of winning.
Yeah.
So he put his team on the spot, but they seem like a
Right.
team capable of doing it with everything they have coming back this upcoming season.
Yeah,
And,
well, I was going to say the schedule is going to be tougher this year.
Mhm.
They pick up James Madison and Marshall out of the East. Last year they had Georgia Southern and who was the other one? Golly, I'm drawing a blank here. Who was the other East team they played? Anyway, they got a tougher draw. They have to go to Troy. The non-conference schedule is pretty tough. Again, they got Oklahoma State. They open with Tulane, which is going to be a huge game at the Group of 5 level. I think if South Alabama were to, I think Tulane's going to be ranked in the preseason. If they go over there and win that game, South Alabama could be ranked for the first time in program history. That would be something.
Yeah, it would. That'd be a great, not just a great win to beat Tulane, a team that come off a great year,
Yeah.
but like you said, get ranked for the first time. It gets so much momentum for the rest of the year if you're able to accomplish that. And Craig, this has been fun having you on talking South Alabama football. Like I said, it's been way too long since we talked. I won't go as long this next time before I ask you on again.
Sure.
But if the listeners and viewers want to catch you online, where can they find you on the work you're doing?
Yeah, first of all, Old Dominion was the other team South played out of the East. I knew I'd come up with
Okay.
eventually, but okay, yeah. I couldn't finish the segment without bringing that up. But anyway, al.com/USA will get you to all of my South Alabama coverage. I am on Twitter at Creg Stephenson, and you can see it on the screen, CregStephenson.
All right. Sounds good, Craig. I appreciate the time, and I hope we can do this again sometime down the road.
All right, Phillip, I enjoyed it, man. Thanks.
If you enjoy this podcast and live in the southeast area of Alabama, check out the Wiregrass High School Football Report brought to you by DGO Strategies. During high school football season, I talk with local coaches and look at the biggest stories and games. The show will be returning soon, and you can check it out on Apple Podcasts, the Phillip Jordan Media YouTube channel, or 969thelegend.com. Now, back to the Phillip Jordan Show. All right, and once again, thanks to Creg Stephenson for coming on the show. Like I said, that was back when the sports talk days when I would have Craig on from time to time to talk South Alabama football, and that was a way back when. But it was good to reconnect with him, and I hope we can get him on again down the road, especially see how South Alabama's doing if they live up to expectations. Going into this, I'm learning, I'm relearning some stuff about a lot of these teams. And just kind of like going over some stuff. And look, I'm close to Troy. Everybody that known me for a while knows that. About an hour away from them. But yeah, South Alabama, they probably should be the favorites going into next season there in the Sun Belt. And anybody that's watching on YouTube just saw me mute and turn my head and cough. I am still struggling with what I was struggling with early in the week. So, still got a cough. The sore throat's gone, but the cough is still there. And I can't really talk long without a cough coming on, as you just saw there. So, normally here, this is a 3-segment show, a news item, an opinion, the interview, and then the mailbag. But we're just going to do the mailbag here, and then I'm going to get out of here just because I may start needing the urge to cough once again. Just like I said, getting through this talking is a bit of a struggle for me right now, but I'm trying to push on, get you guys out your Thursday podcast. But anyway, so let's jump to the mailbag real quickly. A familiar name on this one too as well. Brandon Eisman, I'd like your thoughts on why this is an XFL question. I said you could throw a spring football question out. So here we go. I'd like your thoughts on why Orlando Guardians can't seem to win a game yet this late into the season. Also, how do you think Alex Golesh will do in his first head coaching position at South Florida? So, two things. Let's talk about the Guardians first. And look, some of you may not care. Some of you may not be watching XFL. I do because I'm a football degenerate. I love football a lot. I love watching it all the time. They're 0-6. They're not good. Why are they bad? The head coach, Terrell Buckley, is in over his head. That's one. The offensive line is horrible. They've had some late game situations where they needed the offensive line to play better, and they didn't. So that's one. And defense just gets shredded by everybody. So that's some reasons why they're 0-6. But there has been some positivity the last two games. They lost to Vegas, who was an 0-5 team, so it was a battle of the offers. They lost 35-32, but the offense showed life. When Quentin Dormady came in, he was 22 of 25, 256, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. End of the game, they just fell apart. Penalties. And penalties have been another thing, too. This team just shoots themselves in the foot all the time, which I tie that back to Terrell Buckley, a coach. Then against Seattle this past week, which was a solid team in the XFL, they lose 19-26. Quentin Dormady was solid, 24-44, 243, 0 touchdowns in that one, but he also threw 0 interceptions. So on the year, he's 67% the last 2 weeks, 499 yards, 2 touchdowns. And the team has gotten better offensively at 25.5 points per game. So you look at this team, the playoffs are probably not going to happen for you. You're 0-6. You need a lot to happen in front of you before you even get into the playoffs. For anybody that doesn't know, there are 2 divisions, North and South. They're in the South with Houston, Arlington, and San Antonio. Top 2 teams in each division go to playoffs. Houston is 4-2. Arlington's 3-3. San Antonio is 2-4. And then, of course, Orlando is 0-6. But is there opportunity for wins here? I look at their schedule the last 4. They play the best team in the league, DC, who just throttled Houston. They just ran right through them. Houston couldn't stop them. So that one, okay, you say they're probably not going to win that one. Then you go to 3-3. No, you host 3-3 Arlington. The offensively not good. They just signed a new quarterback or traded for Luis Perez. They cut their starter from this past week, Kyle Sloter. Luis Perez, Bob Stoops said is, probably not going to be able to play just because, he's not equipped with the playbook and all that stuff. So it'll be Drew Plitt starting. Now that next week it may be Luis Perez, but Arlington's not great. Their offense struggles. I don't think changing quarterback is going to change what their issues been on offense. I don't think the play calling is that great. And Arlington won their first game 10-9. So that may be an opportunity. And then at San Antonio, I don't know what they've gone through 4 quarterbacks already. And I mean, they're in the playoff hunt too. So they're 2-4, but I still think it's not a guaranteed lock that the San Antonio Brahmas would beat Orlando. So Orlando may have some opportunities against Arlington and San Antonio to get a victory. Then they would close at St. Louis. That's a big deal because them and Seattle are tied really good teams for that second spot. They're in the North behind DC. So that's kind of like where that does sit for them there. But those two middle games, I think there's an opportunity there for Orlando to get a victory. I would like that. I would like to see a team go 0-10. So, and in the next part, obviously, I'll bring the question back up on the screen. Also, how do you think Alex Golesh will do in his first head coaching position at South Florida? Expectations. He's coming from Tennessee. Offense, that's what you're going to expect here, I think, out of South Florida. I think you don't need to think you're just going to go from 1-11 to winning your conference. That's not going to happen. I do see 6 games on their schedule that they can be in and potentially win. I don't think they can win all of them, but they could be in. Florida A&M, Rice, FAU, UConn, Temple, and Charlotte. Charlotte was a good last year. So I do believe they can be in those. So I'm looking at, you go from 1 win to 4 wins. And a lot of people say, well, I still losing record, but it's progress. It's in the right direction. This is going to take a lot of building, a lot of transfer portal guys. He's going to probably need to hit the portal again after all the spring ball, that 15-day period when the portal is going to open up again. They lost their best player, and Brian Batty to Auburn, their running back. They do play their spring game on a Friday on the 14th of April. Quarterback, obviously, you look at the success with Henry Hooker, Joe Milton. Can they find some kind of success at quarterback? The veteran is Jerry Bohannon. Then you have freshman quarterbacks Byron Brown and Bryce Archie. What are you going to do at running back and receivers? They brought in some transfer receivers there. And defensively, look, running this kind of offense, your defense is never going to be like Georgia or top of the league or the country or anything like that. You just want your defense to be good enough to create some turnovers. Now, I was reading up also recent spring practice. Some scrimmages they have forced some turnovers, which is something they did not do last season. So that is a good sign. But they got a lot of guys back from last year's defense, which I don't know, experience, yes, but they weren't good. Last year they were last in college football. We allowed yards per play at 7.42 and per game at 516.6. And then they gave up 41 points per game last year. So he's got a lot to go. So I think first year, 4-8, you build on stuff, you have some success, you show signs, and then year 2 is when maybe you can jump up to 6 or 7. This has got to be a build. This isn't going to be a quick turnaround there in South Florida. So that's one thing. And there's plenty of talent. There's plenty of talent locally. You should not have a problem doing that. But thank you, Brandon, for the question. And as always, if you want to get a question on the Phillip Jordan Show or a topic idea, opinion, anything like that, you can email me at sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com. Hit me up on social media at pjordansec. Leave a review on Apple Podcast. I always appreciate that. Or leave a comment on the video, and I will respond there as well. So you guys can do that, and I always appreciate the comments. And I'm going to get out of here because I've done had to, in this last segment, hit the mute button twice because I needed to cough. So I'm going to get out of here Tuesday. Hopefully, my voice, the coughing, I will be back in prime Phillip Jordan mode. Potential really big show on Tuesday. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm excited about it. I've got a guest lined up. Hopefully, it does not fall through. Everything is a go. I've got a big guest for you guys on Tuesday. I'm really excited to talk to on the show. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be very interesting. But hopefully I will be back closer to 100% on Tuesday. But anyways, guys, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. Podcast is available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. If you're on Apple Podcasts, leave a review. I always read them on the show. I appreciate it. Hop on YouTube. Leave a comment. I'll read those as well. Check out all my written work over at Last Word on College Football. I've got an Auburn receivers and tight end article up right now. I can check out all other great writers over there as well. I really appreciate that. All of them would. And and you can email me, sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com. Anyways, guys, I hope you have a great weekend. If you're a football fanatic, we got the you got XFL going on. You got Michigan spring games going on Saturday too as well. I may check that out. Of course, the Final Four is going on. I will go ahead and make my prediction because you won't hear from me from Tuesday when the game's over. I believe it will be UConn versus San Diego State, And then I'm going to go with UConn to win a national championship. For all wrestling fans, you got WrestleMania weekend coming up. So a good sports weekend this weekend, but I would be back with you guys on Tuesday. Anyways, as always, let kindness be your compass. And you've been watching and listening to the Phillip Jordan Show.